Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anna Wong, who's director of the ACT Historic Places organisation. So we're moving from Sydney out into that quintessential 1920s place of Canberra. And it seemed to me particularly appropriate that we ask Anna to talk today, both because I'm sure too many of you have been involved in online shopping, and her story is about the forerunner of our online shopping, but also because I think COVID has made people who were perhaps not aware we lived in a federation suddenly aware that there are states as well as a nation, and a whole different perspective on our political geography. So Anna's going to talk about a house, Calthorpes House, which was built in 1927 when Mrs. Calthorpe furnished it with a mail order catalogue. Sounds fabulous. A shopping spree at Beard Watson. I'm just old enough to remember my mother and grandmother talking about Beard Watsons, and perhaps some of you will remember also. And in many ways, this little house reflects the domestic architecture of the new world of the newly established capital in Canberra. So Anna Wong manages Lanyon Homestead, Mugga Cottage and Calthorpes House, the three heritage places that showcase Canberra's ecological and cultural history. And from her multifaceted career as an historian, archaeologist, curator, and heritage manager, Anna is a passionate contributor to storytelling about objects, people, and places, particularly through the history of food, gardening, music, and decorative design. And she's currently researching how heritage supports community well-being and resilience. And so with that particularly in mind for Calthorpes House, I'll introduce Anna.
I'll share my screen, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of today. Here we go. So hello from Canberra, everyone, the bush capital of Australia. I'm speaking to you from Ngunnawal country, and I'm going to try and get my slides to move just a bit. And I'd like to pay my respects to the Ngunnawal people and their elders past, present and future. Today we're exploring Calthorpes House and the exciting new world for the Calthorpes family when they moved into their brand new home in the federal capital in 1927. Calthorpes House is now a house museum, and this property is so special because it includes the intact domestic collection of the family when they moved in. And this includes the furniture that Mrs. Calthorpe purchased through a mail order catalogue and a shopping spree in Sydney. But first, let me introduce you to the Calthorpe family. We have Della and Harry Calthorpe and their two daughters, Dell and Dawn. Their youngest daughter, Dawn, is now 96 years old, and she turns 97 next month, and she still lives in Canberra. She's sharp as a tack, and she's always very quick to correct me when I say something that is wrong. And a lot of the family stories and recollections that I share with you today is actually from Dawn. So introducing the parents, Della Ludvigsen was born in Sydney, and she was named after the Delaware River, near where her American mother was born. Her father was from Norway. She was a city girl, and she had never ventured beyond Katoomba. However, that all changed when she went to Maitland to help her sister and her newborn baby. And while she was there, she happened to go to a friend's place for a musical evening, and that was where Della met Harry. Harry was a country boy from Cootamundra. He had just returned from Gallipoli as part of the Light Horse Regiment after being injured from an exploding shell. He was still enlisted with the Australian Army, and he was working as part of the recruitment campaign in the Goulburn, Braidwood, Yass and Queanbeyan area. Love blossomed, and Della and Harry got married in Sydney in August 1917. Harry had also fallen in love with the Monaro region, and he scraped together all his savings to purchase a stock and station agency in Queanbeyan with Robert Everson. So these are some photos of Harry during his war years as well. And this is the business that Harry set up in Queanbeyan. After Della and Harry got married, they moved briefly to Braidwood and to Queanbeyan, where they built their first home in 1924. And the parents welcomed their first daughter, Dell, in 1918. She was apparently a whopping 14-pound baby. And their second daughter, Dawn, was born in 1924, the same year that their new house in Queanbeyan was finished. And Dawn was apparently named after the magnificent sunrise that followed her birth. Land sales in Canberra also started in 1924, and Harry became the agent for land auctions. Canberra was still a series of dusty paddocks at the time, and being a city girl, Della later told her daughters that the only social activity on Sundays were endless picnics under eucalypt trees surrounded by flies and cowpats. The utopian city beautiful and garden city ideals of Walter and Marion Griffin's winning design must have seemed like a dream. But Della saw the promise of Canberra, and only after a year in their modern new home in Queanbeyan, Della told her husband, Harry, if there is to be a real city in the paddocks over in the Federal, that is where I'll like to be. So they chose a block at 24 Mugga Way in Red Hill, in an area planned for Canberra's larger homes. The land purchase came with the condition that they had to improve the land by at least £1,200 within the first 2 years. The average weekly wage at the time was about £100. Their daughter, Dawn, recalls the uninterrupted view across the limestone plains from the front of the yard and Red Hill rising from behind. The Calthorpes chose Oakley and Parks, the Melbourne-based architectural firm, to design their home. And these were the same architects who designed the lodge for the Prime Minister. Oakley and Parks also designed houses for public servants, as they had been chosen by the Federal Capital Commission at the time. And the cottages designed for the Federal Capital were influenced by Spanish Mission, Leslie Wilkinson's Mediterranean style, and Hardy Wilson's Colonial Revival. And some of these examples along Mugga Way are other examples of early homes built during the 20s. One of the most popular designs was known as CCC9, which, like Calthorpes House, had rough cast walls and Tudor architectural influences in its porch and chimney. The house included a very modern layout. So this photo of Calthorpes was taken about a decade after it was completed. So this was taken about 1938. And looking at the layout of the house, it was a very, very modern design. It had separate living, dining, and food preparation areas, and also separate washing and sleeping areas. It was fully wired and connected to electricity, and the bathroom was the epitome of modernity, located inside the house with modern plumbing and hot water and tiled in white. The house layout still had references to the past, with a separate bedroom for the living maid located just off the kitchen. The Calthorpes House, the Calthorpes new home was finished in 1927, the same year that Parliament House was opened by the Duke and Duchess of York. And these are some wonderful photos of the day that Parliament opened. And as you can see, it was pretty much in the middle of a paddock. And on moving day, when the Calthorpes was moving to their new home, their daughter Dawn remembered, Mum was already there, having put a casserole in the oven, and I arrived with Dad, my older sister Dell, our pet canary Tiddles, the cat, and Johnson, our cattle dog. And this lovely photo was taken shortly after they moved. So you have Dell as the younger daughter and her older sister standing behind her. And driving from Queanbeyan to Canberra on that moving day, Dawn recalled that all they could see was some sheep, fences, and a couple of farmhouses. Their car was the only one on the road, and her father said, one day, all this will be covered by the most beautiful city in the world. So moving into a new house, how did Mrs. Calthorpe furnish her beautiful new home? As a very new city, retail therapy in Canberra was rather limited. So we had a few retail centres starting to pop up from the 1920s. This included Manuka in East Lake, which is now known as the suburbs of Griffith and Kingston. And some of you may recognise these photos as the Sydney and Melbourne buildings in Civic, which started in 1926. So the Sydney building was finished first in 1927, and the Melbourne building was finished not until 1946. And some of the first retailers that opened in this area included a hairdressing salon, a tobacconist, a news agency, and the Blue Moon Cafe. And this cafe opened in 1928, offering milkshakes and cakes, as well as providing meals at all hours, apparently, and catering for engagement parties and weddings. For the Calthorpe family, groceries, milk and bread were home delivered, a bit like our COVID experience. And there is a wonderful hatch at the back of the house for home deliveries, a no contact delivery feature that we probably all wish we had during lockdown. Mrs. Calthorpe also had this very handy shopping list, which reminded her of which grocery items she needed to buy. The more established town of Queanbeyan continued to be the primary retail area for Canberrans. And for larger and special items, Canberrans relied on trips to Melbourne or Sydney, and also mail order catalogues. And this is exactly what Mrs. Calthorpe did to furnish her home. Now, most of us probably did indulge in a little bit of online shopping during lockdown, but some of us might not actually know what mail order catalogues are. So for people who didn't live near cities like Sydney and Melbourne, mail order catalogues were the lifeline to the latest fashions and furnishings. So think online shopping in a paper format that was delivered by snail mail, a bit like our IKEA catalogues today. So department stores in Europe and North America had started publishing illustrated catalogues from the mid-19th century. And this was adopted by Australian retailers as well. So in Sydney, the well-known department stores included David Jones, which grew from a very small store in 1838 to a very large department store on George Street in 1887. David Jones released his first mail order catalogue in 1890, allowing customers from all around Australia to buy their goods. The department store Farmers also opened around the same time as David Jones, beginning as a drapery store in 1839, and they expanded into larger premises in 1874. And then we also have Grace Brothers that, like Farmers, started off as a drapery store in 1885, so a little bit later. And then they expanded into a 5-story department store on Broadway, which is still a very iconic landmark across the road from Sydney University. So this building was finished in 1904, and it became known as the Model Store. And Grace Brothers began publishing its monthly catalogue in 1907 called The Model Trader. And by 1909, Grace Brothers was posting 12,000 copies of The Model Trader per month to customers. So that was a very, very high volume. As you can see, the mail order catalogues were beautifully illustrated, and they sold, aspirations and dreams through shoes, dresses, undergarments, and furniture. And as part of the Calthorpes collection, we actually do have some David Jones and Farmers catalogues that Mrs. Calthorpe kept. And we even have some catalogues for ordering pianola rolls. Now, the Calthorpes family didn't throw out all the furniture when they moved to Canberra. They did bring some of those with them. And this included, let me go through these. So these are some examples of furnishing catalogues. So this is from Grace Brothers. And so this is around the same time that the Calthorpe family was moving house. So this advertisement is basically selling window furnishings and curtains. This is another example from Grace Brothers and promoting the use of Australian timber. And this one is fantastic because I'll later show you the Jacobean style hallway furniture that Mrs. Calthorpe purchased. So this was obviously a style that was very popular during that period. So some of the furniture that the Calthorpe family did bring over included their lounge suite and pianola in the sitting room, the breakfast room table, and then the double bed and dressing table became the bedroom furniture for their eldest daughter, Della. But Mrs. Calthorpe also wanted new furnishings, and for this she turned to the very prestigious Bede Watson & Co. This company opened in 1889, and they initially sold only soft furnishings like carpets and floor coverings. In 1902, Bede Watson acquired a furniture manufacturing business, and the company grew into a high-class home furnishing retailer. This catalogue is not the one that Mrs. Calthorpe used, unfortunately. This is actually part of the Canberra Museum catalogue. It doesn't have a date on it, but looking at the architecture, the furniture styles, we're dating it to about 1910, 1920s. And inside are some wonderful photos of the Bede Watson showrooms and also their floor spaces as well. So by this stage, they had moved into a 5-story store on George Street. They were employing 130 employees and were displaying 33 model rooms, from dining rooms, drawing rooms, kitchens, and bathrooms. On the top floor of the George Street store, they had a workshop for making curtains, furnishing draperies, and stone carpets into rugs. And Bede Watson also manufactured its own furniture, and their workshop was located in Redfern at the time, and they were employing about 150 people for this task. So in 1917, the Australian manufacturer praised the furniture that Bede Watson sold, describing that the furniture it sells, and particularly the furniture it produces, is distinguished at once for its good workmanship and for its artistic beauty. So this is from the catalogue in the Canberra Museum collection. And as you can see, it had a very, very broad range of furniture styles. It provided complete suites for rooms. So this is different examples of bedroom suites. You have dining rooms as well, and also advertisements for window dressings. They also advertised through the prestigious magazine The Home in the 1920s and 30s, and they supplied furnishings for a number of artist-designed model rooms at the celebrated Burdekin House exhibition in 1929. So, and this is a price list at the back of the catalogue. So when someone purchased Bede Watson furniture, they were basically purchasing the idea of prestige and artisan quality furnishings and demonstrating a level of affluence. So it was not surprising that Mrs. Calthorpe, who by now was the wife of a very successful land agent in Canberra, would turn to Bede Watson & Co. to furnish her architecturally designed house. The same architects, don't you forget, who designed the Prime Minister's Lodge. While we don't have the exact catalogue that Mrs. Calthorpe used, we do have her receipts. So she was amazing in that she kept a lot of these type of documents. So we know that she travelled to Sydney in July in 1927, taking a copy of the architectural drawings of her house. And over a 2-day period, she purchased a range of furniture, fabrics, curtains, carpets, glass and dinnerwares and lampshades for her house. And this included the Jacobean hall table and palm stand in the hallway. She also purchased a 3-piece maple bedroom suite and bedstands. And also the Chippendale dining table and suite. This is a beautiful piece actually, it's an extendable table. So very modern. And she also purchased a range of liqueur and cocktail glasses, dinner plates, meat dishes, and also some beautiful lampshades like this one. And I'll take you back to the sitting room. She also had these beautiful tasseled curtains and window coverings made from Bede and Watson. In total, Mrs. Calthorpe spent over £705, which was a substantial amount of money at the time. However, she did purchase all the items on sale. She received a 12.5% discount, and this probably explains the eclectic range of period style furniture that she purchased. Staff from Bidwasson then travelled to Canberra to deliver the furniture, lay the carpets and lino, and also fit the curtains. So it was a considerable purchase. Not everything was perfect. Mrs. Calthorpe always claimed that the dining table was not the one she had selected, and she regretted not having a paler border on the Persian pattern Wilton carpets in the sitting room, dining room, hall, and passage. But Mrs. Calthorpe must have been very happy overall with the purchase, because the family did not replace their furniture collection after moving there in 1927. Mrs. Calthorpe was a meticulous housekeeper, and from a momentary whim to engage Florence Broadhurst to provide redecorating ideas, Mrs. Calthorpe decided that her original furnishings and her choices suited her family beautifully. The collection is also important because interwoven through the collection is the family's personal collection. And from this, we get a sense of the popular culture of the time and also the social history of Canberra. So we have the wonderful pianola and the pianola rolls and the music that they listened to. And the radio was the central part of the Calthorpe family life, and apparently it set Mr. Calthorpe's routine on a Sunday. The kitchen is basically a reflection of the change in domestic technology during the 20th century. So we have a very early mixmaster, and then the change in cooking technology. So originally the house came with a fuel metal stove, and then in 1934 they were provided with an electric cooker stove. But apparently it could never achieve the quality of cooking, especially when you were doing a roast or scone. So the family continued using the fuel stove and only the cooker stove for emergencies. And then we have the ice box, and then the later Kelvinator fridge, which is still just working, but just. In Dawn's bedroom, we see books and the hobbies of a girl growing up in Canberra. Her love for reading, including, you can see in that pile of books, the Australian classic, Seven Little Australians. She was obsessed with Shirley Temple and Hollywood movies of that time. She collected badges and hosted lovely afternoon teas with her dolls, including this little one called John, who unfortunately got very sunburnt after being left in the sun on a beach during a family holiday to Narooma, which is a good advertisement for wearing sunscreen, I think. So from the experiences of World War I, Canberra did offer a bright future for the Calthorpes family. And the 1920s and 30s was a blissful period for them. Dawn remembers that some adults sent from other cities struggled with the challenges of the 1920s Canberra, but I don't think you'll find a happier, more fun place to grow up as a kid. Those early years were some of the happiest days of my life, playing hopscotch on the back porch, skipping in the garden, collecting wildflowers from Red Hill and catching yabbies in the Molonglo River. And this beautiful photo is actually taken in the back garden of their home. So on a very hot summer's day, their parents would turn on the sprinklers and let the daughters and their friends play in the backyard. So for Harry and Della Calthorpe, Canberra was the answer to their hopes and dreams of a bright and exciting new world. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Lovely talk, very, very interesting. And it's great to get an insight into what, I guess, life was like in the new federal capital. We did get one question during your talk. It comes from Pauline Kirby. Did they ever have a live-in maid?
They did, actually. They initially had one from Glasgow who became very homesick and left quite early on. The second maid was named Mary, and she was also from England, and she actually stayed with them right up until the Depression started in the 30s. And she ended up marrying the gardener. So they remained living in Canberra. And Mary, even though she left the Calthorpe service, she actually continued coming back occasionally to help Mrs. Calthorpe. While the 20s and early 30s were obviously a very blissful time for the Calthorpes, the family fortunes did take a slight turn during the Depression period, and they were not able to afford a living maid anymore. So yes, for a little while they did.
Thank you. Catherine Bishop would like to know, did Della work or play a role in the business at all?
No, she didn't. She didn't have to. She actually loved bridge. So nearly every afternoon, she would meet up with her friends and play bridge. And certainly during the early part of her life there, she supervised the housekeeping because they had a living maid. Dawn actually remembers the day that that they realised that they had lost a lot of money because of the crash in the stock market, and her mum was very quiet and very teary. And from that point onwards, her mum did play a larger role with household duties, but certainly compared to other families in Canberra and elsewhere, they were still fairly comfortable.
Krista would like to know, is Calthorpes House currently open to the public?
We have reopened. So we were closed during lockdown, but we are open. So we open every weekend from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And we will welcome any visitors who like to see the House Museum. It is amazing.
We have a direct question from Peter. Peter would like to say, look, great presentation, Anna. Is there any archaeology on the site, for instance, dumped or buried in the backyard, or was the garbage collection a priority right from the outset?
Being a new city, it was a very well-designed city. So a lot of those city services did come by. The garden is very intact. So while I spoke about the architecture design house, they actually did have a landscape designer design the garden as well. So in addition to a very intact collection, the garden is also a wonderful reflection of garden history and design of that period. When World War II started, Harry, being a former, soldier during World War I, became very, very concerned, and he actually had an air raid shelter, a bunker constructed in their backyard. So that is still there, and it is a beautiful, item of archaeological interest. So he was very aware. He was very concerned that Australia might be invaded during the Second World War, and so he was prepared. And there were very strict requirements in Canberra during the war years, including turning off all your lights, having heavy curtains closed during the evenings in case there was an air attack. And by the time the World War II ended, Dawn was a new mum, and she went out to the movies, came back and noticed all the lights on. And she wondered what was going on. And it was basically the end of the Second World War. So all the Canberrans went, hooray, we're turning on all the lights.
Samantha would like to know, did the Calthorpe daughters go to school? Did they have a governess? If they did go to school, where did they go?
They did go to school. So Canberra Grammar was one of the very early schools open, and the girls attended that school. When the stock market crashed and the income was greatly reduced, Dawn was sent to the public school, which is one of the oldest schools in Canberra, called Calthorpe. Mrs. Calthorpe was not happy, but had no choice until one day Dawn came home and wrote a swear word. And that was the end. The very next day, Dawn got sent back to girls' grammar, and there was no further discussion.
Oh, wow. Question from Prue. How did the house contents stay in such original condition?
They didn't. So Miss Calthorpe really did love her house. She was a very proud housekeeper, and everything was maintained beautifully. The family lived there right up until the late 1970s when Mrs. Calthorpe passed away. So not a lot had actually been thrown away. And it was actually Dawn's daughter, Jill Waterhouse, who was studying history and ended up being a lecturer at ANU. She was having a party with friends one day with her fellow academic friends. And apparently one of her friends walked in and went, "Goodness, Jill, this is a time capsule." And that was when the idea of Calthorpes House being worthy of becoming a museum came about. So the fact that it was lived in by one family, Miss Calthorpe kept a lot of her receipts. So we still have shopping receipts. We have the original recipe book and instruction manual for the cooker, electric stove. So I guess it was just the family being wonderful collectors as well.
All right, this will be our final question, and if you have any more questions about Anna's talk, please save them till the end when we come back together. So Richard would like to know how easy was it to return mail order purchases if you weren't happy?
I think you had to mail them back. So I'm guessing that there must have been a good refund policy. That's my assumption. Some families did make an annual trip into places like Sydney and Melbourne, especially for clothing, because you had to be fitted. But once you had that done, you could then order via your mail order catalogues as well. But I'm not exactly sure the refund policy, but I'm guessing it was probably more than 14 days.
That's funny. Coming from someone who previously worked in a previous life worked in retail. Thank you, Anna, and thank you for a lovely talk. That was very fascinating.
Yes, and thank you, Anna. I have been to the house many years ago, but I've always been fascinated with those mail order catalogues and the way in which they sort of sell dreams. But then for us historians working on heritage places, or even those of us looking at deceased estate files where you wonder what on earth that strange musical instrument was, they're the go-to dream of the past. So thank you. That was just fabulous. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of visitors from the people here as Sydney opens up and we can actually get to Canberra. So thank you so much.